After Holy Week, we will examine the theorem of the impossibility of socialism, which appears in Chapter 3 of my book, Socialism, Economic Calculation and Entrepreneurship. The essential idea is that it is impossible to organize society from above, by force, based on coercive commands, because the agency in charge of planning society cannot acquire the knowledge or information it would need to incorporate into those commands to give them a coordinating effect. Well, this impossibility also applies in all cases to monetary central planning agencies, central banks, with thousands of civil servants, the most powerful computers, central bank governors, etc. Central banks persistently attempt to fine-tune the economy, as if they could at every moment inject the money necessary to keep the economy running well, and set appropriate interest rates. And lo and behold, we read in the news that Alan Greenspan, or Ben Bernanke in the past, or Janet Yellen today, has decided to leave interest rates unchanged, or raise them a little, or lower them, and Jean-Claude Trichet or Mario Draghi, as president of the European Central Bank, does the same. And they offer their explanations. But wait a minute, are we to believe that one person, or a board of people, or those thousands of civil servants at their computers are going to be able to acquire the information necessary for this to work well? The answer is obvious. These people are responsible for monetary policy, and look at the results of their work. It is impossible for them to get it right, according to the theorem of the impossibility of socialism developed by the Austrian school. And the curious thing is that when the time comes to hold them accountable, they look for scapegoats and excuses. Bankers make a lot of money. They took excessive risks. Listen, how could they avoid taking excessive risks with interest rates reduced to zero or even negative rates? We need more regulation. The rating agencies made mistakes. Central bankers will say anything but, I am to blame. I, Mr. Ben Bernanke, my board, Mr. Jean-Claude Trichet, and all of us who have orchestrated runaway growth in the money supply at zero or negative interest rates. Citizens swallow their excuses. I examine the theorem of the impossibility of socialism with respect to the financial system in three contexts. First, fractional reserve banking, the context we live in. I consider the possibility that certain monetary rules, like the Taylor rule, could serve as guidelines for the correct monetary policy, and I show that this is theoretically impossible. Second, I look at a 100% reserve banking system with a central bank that is responsible for providing the monetary base. This is the proposal made by Maurice Allais, a French winner of the Nobel Prize in Economics, who recognizes that a 100% reserve ratio is necessary, but argues for a fiduciary paper currency which would be issued by the state and would grow by 2% per year. Such a system is not worthy of our trust. Money manipulated by the state is extremely dangerous. There are many examples, some of which are quite notable, like in Argentina under General Perón, where there was a 100% reserve requirement but a paper banknote base, and severe distortion resulted. Third, I analyzed the case of a totally free banking system which operates without a central bank but with a fractional reserve ratio in a privileged manner. I explain why that cannot work either, for there is a very powerful incentive for all private bankers to agree to orchestrate credit expansion together. Imagine there are two banks, Bank A and Bank B, each of which can expand or not expand. If neither expands, both survive but bring in small profits. If either bank expands but the other does not, the bank that expands fails because it loses reserves, which go to the other bank through the clearinghouse. However, if both banks expand simultaneously, they both make a huge amount of money. This extremely simplified analysis clearly shows that all private bankers who operate with a fractional reserve have a tendency to expand, and that a fractional reserve free banking system leads to credit expansion, which ultimately gives rise to financial crises, which in turn provide the main pretext for later justifying the existence of a central bank. When citizens find they cannot withdraw their money, and a bank freeze is imposed, and they cry, "What has happened to my money?" they will demand a bank bailout. Therefore, the chief explanation for the emergence of central banks is that the exercise of fractional reserve banking has been permitted, and central banks have resulted. And vice versa. We can only do away with central banks if we reintroduce a 100% reserve requirement. And who will issue the monetary base? We will discuss that when we look at Chapter 9 next Thursday. The market itself will issue it via a gold standard. But I do not want us to get ahead of ourselves. From page 675 to the end of the chapter, you will find a critical analysis of the whole modern school of fractional reserve-free banking without a central bank. A very important debate has taken place in this area in various scientific articles published in the United States. There has been debate even within the Austrian school, because a group of Austrian economists advocate eliminating the central bank, but allowing bankers to do as they wish. This group is led by White, Selgin and others, and here I explain that economic cycles would still be triggered under such circumstances. Granted, expansion would not go as far as it does when a central bank orchestrates it, but economic cycles would still be caused. I base my reasoning on Longfield's argument that bankers would tend to agree to act together, which I have just considered, and also on the dynamic conception of the market. Read it, because it is a fascinating current debate in economic science, in which your professor has inadvertently ended up playing a leading role.